Welcome everyone to TCS Sustainathon Singapore 2021. This is our webinar on making sense of sustainability challenges. I'm Amanda, and with me is Cheryl, and we will be your hosts for today. It is a pleasure to have all of you here with us to learn more about sustainability challenges in the world of education. Before we get started, let me first run you through the main agenda for today. We will start off with an opening address by our TCS Singapore's Vice President and Country Head, as well as our supporting partners, and we will end off with an exciting discussion with our strategic and challenge partners. Before we get started, let me first run you through a little more about what TCS Sustainathon is and the theme for the year. The idea behind TCS Sustainathon is that it is an initiative to inspire and empower young minds through the use of ideas, technology, and innovation to address some of the real-world sustainability issues that we're facing. Hence, this year's Sustainathon focuses on reimagining education, where we aim to rethink how we learn and reinvent how education can be. The education landscape has been disrupted, so how can we ideate and innovate while at the same time leveraging the use of technology to ensure inclusive and quality education for all? And at the same time, we want to promote lifelong learning while supporting the well-being of all learners. I think this is something important for us to address now, and I'm definitely looking forward to the discussion we have ahead of us. So now, without further ado, let me first introduce Amit Nifsaka, Vice President and Country Head of TCS Singapore. I think we will all be kind of jealous when I say that Amit is currently on a Eurostar somewhere on the way to Paris and wouldn't be able to address you guys live in person, and he definitely wishes to be able to be here, but fret not, he has actually recorded his opening address for us. And so I would say over to you, Amit, and let's play the video recording he has prepared.
Good evening. I'm delighted to welcome you to this edition of TCS Sustainathon. At the outset, let me apologize for not being there live, as I had to undertake some critical travel. We launched TCS Sustainathon last year, and it has been an incredible success. We had the honor of the President of Singapore, Madam Halima Yaqub herself, being present for the first edition. And we never imagined the kind of success that we would see for this IP and this initiative that was created in Singapore. This year, I am pleased to share that we are taking Sustainathon beyond our borders to other countries in Asia Pacific, as well as to India and Europe. The topic last year was food waste, and we had some very interesting solutions that were presented by the student community. This year, the topic is education. How can we reimagine education? The pandemic has created disruption for all of us at a large scale, whether it is the way we work, or play or interact, but also in the way we learn. And what we really would like to see or achieve out of this edition of TCS Sustainathon is to see some innovative thinking and solutions on how education can be reimagined. Whether it is home-based learning, whether it is changes in content and curriculum, or it is preparing people and today's students for a workforce of the future which will be very, very different, or making education more inclusive. Does virtual learning or a hybrid learning create challenges to make it even more inclusive? These are some of the thoughts that we have in mind, and we have put these across as questions that our participants would need to answer. And as TCS, along with our partners, we encourage you to re-envision learning for everyone. How can technology be an enabler to drive future-ready and inclusive education and help not only learners but also educators to adapt to the evolving landscape? I welcome you once more to TCS Sustainathon, and I wish to thank our ecosystem of partners Our strategic and challenge partners, National Institute of Education Singapore, NTUC Learning Hub, and SG Enable. Also, our supporting partners, the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Singapore, Global Compact Network Singapore, and NTU Institute of Science and Technology. I've always believed in my life that technology and learning are critical to human progress. This is an opportunity for all the participants to bring the two together and come out with some innovative, path breaking ideas. Thank you for joining and best of luck.
Amazing welcome address. Yeah, I totally agree. Technology and learning, how can we actually gel together, bringing an impact and contributing to the society? So, next, we'll be hearing from our supporting partners. However, one of our supporting partners, Global Compact Network Systems, won't be able to join us today. So, now let's, welcome our first supporting partner, Her Excellency, Margaret Bono, from the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands of Singapore. Ambassador Margaret is an advocate for sustainability, and she actively engages students in conversations, revolving around sustainability, innovation, and also inspires them to be part of the action. So we have the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Singapore as our strategic partner.
Thank you, Cheryl. And it's really great to be here with you. I would like to start by thanking TCS and everybody that we can still be part of this important way of the future. I think young brains have the future, and I was impressed with the proposals that we saw last year. I would like to share with you something a little bit different. Maybe you recognize this song. It's been a sleeper last year, and it's actually now, I think, still quite popular. It's Heat Waves by the Glass Animals. And that song was released in the midst of the pandemic. And I used it a lot to actually feel more relaxed. And I was working, and I'm still working a lot on sustainability. And heat waves are part of the new pattern of climate change, help me to sort of continue to learn and to grow. And I think for me, music is part of learning. So I'm not sure if that's going to be part of your solutions, but I'm really interested. Then something else. Halloween going to take place on Sunday. And this is my recycled Halloween basket, where I will share the candies with the neighborhood kids. But there's something else I can do with it as well. There's a makerspace at one of the schools here in Singapore, the Dutch school, where you can sort of get rid of your old plastic, and the children will make pallets of it and create new toys with it. That way they learn that you have to be sustainable and that everything comes from something and has to go into the next level. So my last point is that you probably will think of something that I haven't even thought of. What I've seen in the pandemic times is that digital learning and all over the place, maybe even between Europe and Asia, is going to be the new normal. And I can't wait to see the solutions that you come and that you explain to me. And that's why I'm so pleased that I can be part of this Sustainathon. So thank you for having me. The Dutch really like to be very pragmatic. And I think this initiative is a pragmatic way forward, also in the times where we have to stick together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Margaret. We are happy to have you join us again this year. Moving next, we actually have another supporting partner. Her name is Professor Vanessa Evers from Nanyang Technological University, Institute for Science and Technology for Humanity. She has also published, almost 200 peer-reviewed publications, many of which are actually in high-quality journals and conferences in human-computer and human-robot interaction. So, let us welcome Professor Vanessa to, share with us her welcome speech. Professor Evers, please.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for the introduction. You can hear from our accents that Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the Netherlands, and myself are from the same country. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of NTU NIST, the Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity, and it's one of the supporting partners of today's webinar. Our institute combines the efforts of the researchers and scientists and students from all disciplines, STEM and non-STEM, to tackle these big challenges that the world is facing in climate challenges. Aging population, global health challenges, poverty, increasing inequality, as well as the effects of the fourth industrial revolution with the advent of new technologies like AI and robotics. And they are impacting every aspect of everyone's lives. Together with industry, government agencies, non-profit organizations, and people in civil society, we will form challenge teams to tackle these problems, to discover new scientific solutions, technological innovations, and ways to design, implement, and govern these solutions to have a real positive impact on people's lives. So an NTU research, but all universities in Singapore are yielding tremendous results in healthcare, artificial intelligence, material science, engineering. But really this means nothing if we can't use it to do good. And to do that, we have to understand the needs of real people, how to make a change for the better in society, and what kind of city and what kind of world people would love to live in. We must know how to have that impact soon, because we don't have the luxury of time anymore. If we want to get this planet back on course towards the sustainable future, we will have to rapidly change everything. We have to change the way that we live. We have to change the way we eat, to change the way we work, the way we travel, and we must change the way that we learn. And that's the challenge that is addressed in today's webinar, of which Nanyang Technological University is very honored to be a supporting partner. And today you're asking yourself through the challenges, how can we transform learning, teaching, the development of skills and knowledge so that humanity is future ready? And the Sustainathon is quite short, but the reality is we don't have much time. According to the climate report, IPCC, we only have a window of about 30 years to turn this ship around. And in the run to the COP climate conference in Glasgow, that's starting this weekend on Halloween, because it's really scary, it's already becoming clear that quite a lot of countries are not really sticking to the carbon reduction goals, and they're definitely not super willing to make investments to commit to even more drastic goals. We know that change is possible. We saw that during the COVID period, and Ambassador Vonno has just explained it as well. It showed us we can dramatically change the way we do about everything. And sadly, all the gains in carbon reduction that we had during the COVID period have already been lost. The point is that while the climate conference COP26 may turn out to be like a Eurovision Song Festival of climate talks, it's clear we cannot wait. It's up to us, it's up to you. We together will envision and realize new ways to learn so that we can equip people all over the world with the talent to make change for a sustainable future. All of you here in the Sustainathon are the agents of change. We will imagine and make possible education that is future ready and inclusive. And we can only do that if we work together across all the differences that we may have. Engineers alone can't solve a complex problem like this. Educational experts alone can't solve a complex problem like this, and governments alone can't do it either. We have to look at these challenges that you will hear about today from all angles. We have to bring together people with vastly different talents and vastly different abilities. We have to build on each other's ideas to come to new, imaginative, creative, crazy, visionary solutions that nobody can think of, only you. The Sustainathon is a marathon, as was explained in the video. And it's a marathon that the whole world is running. And not everybody may know that yet. So let's give them some great ideas to run with. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Vanessa. So, it's a great speech. I totally agree with you on, each and every one of us here are actually agents of change. And, we have to actually work together collectively to solve all these critical issues and even the challenges together. So, now, without further ado, maybe let Amanda, take you through the challenge statements we have for this year's TCS Sustainathon Singapore. And, she will be introducing our strategic and even our challenge partners who are behind all these thought-provoking challenge statements. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. So this year we have 3 different challenge statements, as you can see on screen, and these are the 3 different ones you guys can pick from. First being enhancing learners' experience in a blended learning environment. Next, you have actualizing paradigm shift towards lifelong learning for the Singapore workforce. And lastly, accessible and inclusive lifelong learning opportunities for persons with disabilities. I will not go into too much detail about it, but I'll let the strategic and challenge partners do the talk instead to Dr. Shanti in a bit. But for now, let me first introduce Mr. Anthony Chiu, ICT and IBE Product Division at NTUC Learning Hub, to share more with us about the challenge statement that he came up with. Okay, Mr. Anthony is going to start with a short video from his end that he sent in over to us. So we're going to just play that video right now. I think you guys can see something on screen. Yeah, so just enjoy this video about education.
I hate studying. I don't know why Pa made me study so hard. Exams, tests, homework, what's the point? I would constantly ask,
why must I learn all this?
As if I need all these formulas when I grow up. But Pa will always tell me,
you're lucky you got a chance to study.
Thanks a lot, Pa. After years of studying, it's finally over! Long gone are the days where I had to sit at my desk staring at books for hours and hours. I worked hard for the next few years to build my career and achieve my dreams. But in life, there will always be uncertainties. I was so focused on my work that I lost sight of how the pandemic affected Pa. Pa, let me help you. With help, we discovered the skills we needed to save the business and turn things around. But that was only the start. I thought I was done with learning, but here I am doing it all over again. Although this time, it felt different. This time, I had Pa by my side. Before this, the only time Pa touched a computer was when he bought it for me. He didn't even know what Facebook or Google was. Pa has always been a hard worker. I knew he would do whatever he needed to survive. But today, seeing him so eager to learn, I saw a newfound spark in his eyes. We applied what we learned to our operations, and business soon picked up. All my life, I've questioned why we needed to study. Until I realized that when we learn, it's not just for ourselves, but also for the ones who matter.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. So in order for you to take on the challenge, I thought it might be good for me to, share with you about Learning Hub. So we are probably the biggest adult training provider in Singapore. So these are some of the domains that we are in: ICT training, employability, teaching them, what are some of the skill sets to be employed and be employable, business subjects, HR subjects, healthcare, security guards, workplace security and health, foreign workers training. You notice that some of these are really for the rank and file because, when we first started, NTUC Learning Hub first started, it's really is for the rank and file workers. But now we have moved towards training a lot for the PMEs, which is the professionals, managers, and executives. Yeah. Give me a minute. I'm pressing my next slide. Okay. Sorry. Give me a minute. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Hey, Mr. Anthony, are you having a bit of difficulty with the control?
Yeah, that's right. Or can I
Which slide
trouble
are
you
you?
to control
Yeah.
on my behalf? Yeah,
Which
okay.
slide are you trying to go? Okay.
Okay, maybe you can go to the, yeah, okay. So we partner with a lot of best in class content provider, really because Learning Hub, we don't have all the faculty and the expertise. So in order for the workers to benefit for the best in class content provider, we work with them, and what we do is we get this courses funded through some of these funding agency, make it really affordable, accessible and affordable. Yeah, and at the same time, we can go to the market faster, so our workers can learn these courses, at as much as they want to, right? And if needed. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So NTUC Learning Hub is part of the bigger NTUC. As you can see, this is our mission. We really want to help workers to earn a better living, right? So study so hard, and at the end of the day, we hope our workers can have a better living. And for NTUC Learning Hub, we really hope that this can transform them, right? So that again, they have a better standard of living. Yeah. Next slide. So we know that because of the pandemic and technology advances, there's a lot of disruptions. In NTUC Learning Hub, we believe that we should save the workers, but if the jobs become, or if the tasks become obsolete, then let's figure out how do we train these workers for these new jobs or new tasks, right? So again, how do we really help the today people who are unemployed today? And also, we also know that there will be some people who are unemployed. For example, if you imagine, like in supermarkets, they have a lot of cashiers right now, but soon these will be, uh, soon we have a lot more automated kiosks. So what do we do with the cashiers right now? Can we train them to be to do something else that's more meaningful, right? I just want to share a couple of stories. Last year when the pandemic hit us, there's a lot of people who are not who are unemployed, who become unemployed, and where we have our road shows to get people to go for our long courses. Some of the people that they don't come to our booth. So like the man especially, right? Then the wife will come to the booth and say, do you have whatever courses do you have for my husband, because he's too shy to come to the booth, and all these stories, right? And the other day I heard also somebody talking about mothers who have not gone back to work because of their children, taking care of the children, and then now they finally come back to work, and then very happy that they are able to buy little luxury, like bringing their kids to McDonald's. So we are just always thinking, right, like how do we really help these people so that at least they have a reasonably good life, and to be better than what they have today. Yeah. Next slide. Now, as I shared with you just now, when we started, having longer courses, and some of the adult learners, right, they say, yeah, I've not been studying for the longest time, right? And now not only do I have to face 2 days course, I now have to face 6 months course, 9 months course. I really cannot take it. There's so much stress, with my taking care of my children or my elderly. It's really very stressful. So in my mind, we need to have courses that's futuristic, fast track. But I think what's also very important is, can we have it to be a little bit more fun? So if you can have all these three, I think it will be perfect. But the reality is we do not know, and we hope that you have the solution. And lastly, it's like, how can we make learning first thing in their mind, right? Whatever it is, it's like, I want to learn, I want to learn, I want to learn. From a push factor, like having to tell somebody, hey, you got to learn. It's like that individual, right? First thing that they come, they learn. Just like some of us, we go, we for whatever reasons, we look at Netflix, look at view some movies. can learning be like a pull factor, right? Not just because I need to learn, but because I really want to learn and I enjoy learning. So I hope that, if you are able to solve this challenge, that will be, you make Singapore workers, right? To really enjoy learning, and also to be able to advance in their career prospect. And I urge you, don't take this just as a challenge, but to really think of the lives that you are able to impact, right? And and again, for the betterment of the workers and for Singapore at large. Thank you. That's the end. Thank you, Amanda. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony, for that sharing. I think what earlier, it's similar to the answer in my question at the very beginning before we played the video, that it is important that it is more of a pull factor than it is like a push factor, like, hey, study, study. And I think that that's something that maybe a lot of us can relate to, especially maybe in our earlier education years. Secondary school, I think I'll let everyone in on the fact that I almost retained in secondary 4 because I didn't really study, and it was only Sec 5 that I pushed myself really hard on my own. So finding your own motivation is also very important, and I think that this is part of what Mr. Anthony is saying. So thank you for that. I think with that, we'll move on to Mr. Justin Sell. So he's a tech analyst at SG Enable, and he'll be sharing with us a bit more about SG Enable's challenge statement. Over to you, Mr. Justin.
Thank you, Amanda. So, good evening, everyone. So, the challenge statement that we have is, how can we, create accessible and inclusive lifelong learning opportunities for persons with disabilities. But before I go into the challenge statement itself, just maybe share a little bit of background about my organization, where I'm from. So, for SG Enable itself, we were actually set up by the Ministry of Social and Family Development. We are the focal agency in the disability sector. So when it comes down to providing information, services, referral, grants, trainings, and even employment as well, and technology, basically, other partnering organizations come to us, persons with disabilities come to us. Actually, we actually support them in this area itself. In addition to that, we also manage the Enabling Village. This is a view of the Enabling Village. Unfortunately, you might not be able to go down now because of all the restrictions and ongoing itself. But hopefully, this give you a sense of what Enabling Village looks like. Yeah, it's very great. There's a lot of greenery. There's a sustainable ecosystem within as well. But alongside that, we do have different kind of amenities, lifestyle services, as well as we do provide training programs here for persons with disabilities to push them into employment. So specifically going down to the problem statement itself, when we look at how did we actually came up with this problem statement itself, we look at of course some numbers first. So this is actually a published number. So about 28.2% of persons with disabilities between the age of 15 and 24 are employed. So it means that this is only a small group of them that are actually being meaningfully employed. The bulk of them perhaps due to whether is it unable to attend certain training courses or unable to get the right opportunities, they are unable to get employment. And these numbers is slightly before COVID-19. So over the past 2 years, there has probably been a lot of changes. A lot of things been running on virtual platforms. So how do we actually get them to meaningfully participate and be engaged in this kind of trainings as well? So we do see a lot of opportunities which can be enhanced for them, through these trainings, but there are definitely barriers to them participating effectively. So some of the things that we can consider, there's perhaps maybe on the trainer side, there's some lack of awareness, on disability management, how to meaningfully engage persons with disabilities, and of course the other key components is, in terms of the training itself, we usually have training materials. You need to access different platforms, perhaps maybe software or even the website itself. If all this kind of content are made inaccessible for persons with disabilities, they will not be able to participate effectively. I would like to point out that, although this is big, so there's actually considerable progress, in terms of building inclusive education for all Singaporeans. But this is usually done at the educational level. So when it comes to post-18 training and learning opportunities, or is it upskilling courses itself, there's definitely more that we could actually be done in this area. And over here, I'm going to talk a little bit about accessibility, because this is quite a key component into the challenge statement itself, and you actually see it being repeated quite a fair bit in the upcoming slides as well when we talk about it. So as I mentioned earlier, as you know, we are moving towards whether it's product services or even content itself becoming more digitalized. If there's inaccessibility in this area, be it your website content, your documents content, your training materials, you actually widen the gap, leaving persons with disabilities, even further behind than before. So like the image illustrated over here on the left, is saying that, to you it's just a small gap itself, but for persons with disabilities, the gap itself can actually be very, very large. So something that, perhaps might be just a little bit of inconvenience for us may result in persons with disabilities, being unable to participate before. So as we look into what are some of the possible solutions itself, some of these persons with disabilities do actually use assistive technologies, or whether it's ICT technologies to help them connect and get access to these training opportunities. But sometimes it is just not accessible, and it's not enough if the content itself was not made accessible in the first place. So going down into the problem statement itself, so how can we leverage on technology itself, to bring training, lifelong learning opportunities for persons with disabilities to be more inclusive and more accessible for them? This is a very, very big problem statement. So if you actually see the problem statement, we actually further narrow it down to we call it 4 different sections. So we make it a little bit more specific for different spectrum of disabilities. So deaf or hard of hearing, visual impairment, physical disabilities, as well as autism/intellectual disabilities. And what we are looking for, how can we make it through accessible content and platform, as well as keeping meaningful engagements and interactions with for persons with disabilities and their peers and trainers. So going to specific for trainees who are deaf or hard of hearing, some of the more specific challenges that they have, is really meaningful interactions. So typically for them itself, if they attend external training, or now you attend a virtual training itself, they will usually need to depend on either a sign language interpreter or speech to text kind of software in order for them to actually receive the information clearly. Yeah, this is especially so if they are able to actually hear or listen, for instance, the trainer through the virtual platform. And while there are some of these software, speech to text software that are out there already, sometimes it's the effectiveness of this software. So a lot of these are not attuned to local accent, or they have varying levels of accuracy. So also this coupled with inaccessible content, such as having a videos without captions itself, it's actually going to create a huge barrier for them to participate effectively. So one interesting example I want to share is somehow for this session itself, I'm unable to hear the sound from all the videos that are actually being played. But if you remember the video from Mr. Anthony just now, he actually has what we call captions. So I was actually able to follow along that video, even though without even being able to hear anything at all. So this is an example, of an accessible video in a sense. Yeah. So some of the existing solutions, there are all these examples of speech to text software. In some of your training, your Zoom videos, your Teams, your YouTube videos, etc., there's actually options to turn on closed captions, turn on live captions. But are these technologies being used effectively and accurately with the training courses itself? And are these platforms actually being used also to conduct virtual trainings today? And are these options actually turned on to support persons with whatever hard of hearing, in terms of attending the training itself? So this is something that perhaps may not be highlighted so effectively, and the accuracy of such solutions still pose a barrier for persons who are deaf or hard of hearing in terms of trainings. For those with visual impairment, some of them might actually be using different kind of assistive technology devices. So are these technologies or the software, for example, like the screen reader software, are these compatible with the training itself? This is especially so if the training requires the use of another specific software. So is that software accessible with the screen reader software, for instance? And when it comes to training materials itself, what are the considerations for the trainers in terms of providing the training materials to this group of friends? So is it only available something like, in hard copy, just paper format, and you give it out? Are there other formats to be considered as well? Or whether can you give like a PPT version that was made accessible to them, so that they can actually have a run through first of the slides, so they know what's upcoming in the meeting. And while all these are being said itself, I'm going back to the point again, accessibility. So when we talk about accessibility, all this content, whether it's a hard copy, soft copy, the website content, your software materials, all these have to be made, or rather have to be accessible to them. If this is not in sync with some of the devices or some of the technologies that they use, they will not be able to participate so effectively. Yeah. So just something for you to think about. Also on the pointer about, having, whether it's tactile or braille formats in terms of hard copy materials, not everyone who has visual impairment knows braille. So that cannot be the only alternative method in terms of handing out the materials. So you need to have a variety of considerations. Each person with disability has their own unique needs, so you need to take all into consideration. When it comes down to physical disabilities, for this, we will not talk really about so much on the environment. We'll go more into the digital stuff. So similar to persons with visual impairment, some of persons with these physical disabilities may actually use different assistive technology to help them access the computer. So for one very, very common example is actually use of switches, alternative mice itself, alternative keyboards to help them access and control the computer effectively. So just in case you're using any particular software for the training, is there going to be any security restrictions? Is there going to be an interference with this alternative context? Usually there will not be, but just in case there are, what are some of the ways to actually go about it? And then also boils back down accessibility again. Are they able to access the content sufficiently? When I talk about making the website, for instance, accessible itself. So for persons with visual impairment, you will need to be screen readable. So you need to be able to read all the different kind of information that you can see. And for persons with physical disabilities, it's more about accessing the content or accessing the sections itself. So one very common way to go about it is, you go to any website and then you use your keyboard itself. Can you access and control everything just using a keyboard, for instance? Yeah. So if that is something that can be done and you can access all the different links, all the different sections and read the information with ease itself, then that website itself is more or less accessible. But for certain sites, sometimes if accessibility wasn't a consideration, you might actually see it skipping certain content, or you might actually not go to specific buttons that probably have only been programmed to be accessible by using the mouse itself. So this is a consideration for you to take note of. And this doesn't apply to just websites, but also any kind of materials or documents that you do. And lastly, for trainees with autism or intellectual disabilities, what we show here is not so much on the technology itself, but it's actually more on the engagement and social interaction. So for some of our friends here, they do have difficulty, in terms of communicating or expressing their thoughts to others. So this may result, whether it's in miscommunication or they may not be able to understand or catch up with the trainings itself. The other challenge is inaccessible content, but this is slightly different. So this is more on talking about the terminologies, the sentences, how you actually put things together. Are you using a lot of abbreviations? Are you putting a lot of complex technical terms inside? Is there a way to make the content easier to understand? Yep. And then, of course, some of them, in terms of difficulty in communication, they use what we call augmentative and alternative communication solutions, or AAC for short. So this can come in different forms. You might have seen some users using communication cards in public places, but today a lot is actually on software itself. So you might see them using their mobile phones, the smart devices, to actually form and speak up. One example of effective use of AAC, you can actually check out, I think, Britain's Got Talent, the one of the more recent winners. He's a stand-up comedian who has cerebral palsy. So he's unable to speak. So he used what we call an AAC solution to actually help him communicate with others. So you can check that one out as well. So while I've explained a little bit more detailed on the 4 specific areas, I will encourage you to actually do a little bit more research, try to find out more information about how we can, what are some of the things that are out there, and some of the challenges that these groups of individuals actually face itself. So this will actually help you when it comes down to designing your solutions. So more specifically, it's really to design and develop, whether is it you have a technological solution, or is it something incorporating a set of practices or enhancing the current practices itself to actually enhance the digital skill training experience for the different trainees with disabilities itself. No specific kind of technology that we're looking at, it doesn't have to always be the new high-tech kind of solutions. Sometimes it can be just enhancing on top of what is currently being used or what is currently being done at the level. And the other key important thing is that the solution must be accessible and sustainable for persons with disabilities itself. So when you go about designing a solutions, these 4 points that I'm going to mention about, I want you to take note. So first, it's always about addressing the needs. So it's always focusing on the needs of persons with disabilities. So depending on which group you choose, always focus on their needs. You do not want to design something that is fanciful and then it does not meet any of their needs itself, then the solution itself is not workable. When it comes down to the context of the usage itself, which is why I asked you to also do some more additional research, based on what I shared and perhaps maybe out there, what are some of the things that are really being used out there? Can some of these be used a little bit differently or used in a more creative manner to actually enhance the experience for persons with disabilities? Sometimes you may not need to develop something new from scratch. Sometimes it's really, just tweaking a little bit of the current process, the current technology itself, or even incorporating something that was perhaps not considered to be used, but in this manner to be used. It can address some of these challenges faced by persons with disabilities. And when you put in the new solution, don't just think about being able to actually address the challenge itself. While it may be so, is there any other potential challenge or barriers that might arise from adopting the solution itself? So you do not want to end up, addressing a problem and then yet creating another problem. Yeah. And as you go about thinking about all this as you develop a solution itself, think about the business case, think about the costing, think about adoption, sustainability. Is this something that persons with disabilities or even just yourself itself, is this something that you might adopt to better enhance your experience in terms of training opportunities? Is this something that is easy to adopt? If it's a complicated technical solution, chances are it's going to have a very, very low adoption because you have to go through a very, very long process in order to get the users attuned to using the solution. And one thing about this is that, technology moves so fast, right? We want something that is also sustainable in the long run. So being easily adaptable, even just to different formats, for instance. So keep in mind these 4 points as you go about designing your solutions. Lastly, this is just an additional resource. So if you see my background, TechAble itself. So TechAble is a space on assistive technology. So over here, we do actually have a physical showcase where we showcase different kind of assistive technology. We also have a web application, which you can actually access by this link or scan the QR code now. You'll be able to find a lot of different kind of assistive technology devices, what they're used for and what are the benefits that might potentially help you when it comes down to researching your ideas and your possible solutions for persons with disabilities. So you can use this as a information base. Unfortunately, TechAble is closed now, so you'll not be able to come in. So, but if you actually scan it with your mobile phone itself, you'll be able to access the tour function, which is the red button at the bottom right of the screen itself. So over there, you can actually do a virtual tour now, which you can select one of the different personas, and they will guide you to some of the different devices we have in TechAble. They are a bit more related to addressing their challenges or their barriers based on their disability type. Yeah, otherwise you can actually just go into the quick browse to browse devices, or go into latest news to check out some of the articles. Some of it are live stories of persons with disabilities actually using technology to help out in their activities in their daily lives. So with that, I am in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Justin. So I think something interesting that he brought up is, definitely there's existing technologies that we can work on to further improve to help persons with disabilities, and not, we don't have to necessarily come up with something new. I think something that will help the students that I think Mr. Justin will agree with is that I think the key point to highlight is, you just have to, it's the small things you have to be considerate about, and you can and empathy definitely to help you pick up on small ways that can help in great substantially in essence that can help all these individuals. So I thank you, Mr. Justin, and I think earlier we had the technical difficulty, but fret not, we have Dr. Shanti back with us. So I think we're gonna pass the stage back to her. Dr. Shanti, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm not going to turn on my video. Seems like Murphy's Law is working for me today.
No.
It's in effect today. Anything that can go wrong is going wrong now. So I'm not going to take the risk. Just let me know in case I freeze again or the slides freeze again. It has been working very well since Justin has been, talking. So my apologies, everybody. I will not turn on the video. I just want to get through the explanation of the challenge statement. Thanks, Amanda.
No problem.
All right. Okay. So as I was saying earlier, we are really looking into the fact that we want to focus on what is really close to your heart. With the COVID situation, in the last 2 years, we have been thrust into a different new normal, as we call it. And schools had to rise to the occasion. Ministry had to rise to the occasion. IHLs had to rise to the challenge of continuing the learning that actually takes place. Now, having said that, the focus of the challenge statement essentially is how do we want to enhance learners' experience in the virtual environment when adopting blended learning approach. As I mentioned earlier, we were confronted with a lot of new formats of learning, new types of learning. We talked about virtual classroom, we talked about blended learning, home-based learning, and online learning. Now, with the introduction of some of these new ways of learning mediated by technology, there were a lot of challenges that we faced in these last 2 years. While we were able to overcome some of them, but I think it is a very real issue that we have in terms of even infrastructure, hardware. Do students have equity in terms of the access of the hardware? Do they have personalized learning devices for them to use? Are they even able to participate in the lessons should they need to? And how does that continuity in terms of the learning actually take place? We also talked about, or rather we had a lot of discussions about connectivity. Hardware was not just a challenge. Once students were given the hardware, how about connectivity issues? Because a lot of the learning that we designed for and we planned for was hinged pretty much on the connectivity issues. So did our students, be it the primary school, secondary school, or even the IHLs, actually have connectivity? What were the challenges that they faced actually? Today was a great example in my case, in fact, where regardless of trying to connect to my 5G data, it wasn't working. And I had to actually activate my husband to come in and help me and be my tech support. So again, it is about the issues, connectivity, seamless transition from your, face-to-face classrooms to online learning, right? What were the challenges that were faced? How can we improve upon some of these, challenges that we faced? Beyond that would be a whole suite of tools that our teachers had to deal with, has students you had to deal with, right? Has teacher educators, even I had to deal with. What were the tools? What were the best tools there? What are the suite of tools that are available to us? Do we have access to them? Do we have subscription to them? Right? These were some of the topics that we had to discuss about and to deal with. Next comes the people factor, learner engagement. When we talk about learner engagement, we all know we've been there, done that. While we are even, listening to this webinar, some of us are checking our WhatsApp, our emails. If any of our challenge partners, if I have not engaged you, maybe you're also watching YouTube videos and maybe Squid Game. All right. So again, this is really a challenge for our teachers in terms of engaging you as students. The classroom environment is really a different environment because you can turn to your friends, you can talk to your friends, you can, engage your teacher. Your teacher is looking at 40 of you in the classroom. But what about in an online virtual classroom environment? What about asynchronous environment? So how do we actually engage our learners? The distraction is always there. It's always very easy for us to go and want to watch, our dramas or, YouTube videos or to socially connect with our friends. But how do we then engage you so that you are learning? Your learning is optimized. Your learning is enhanced. So that's another area that we want to look at. Associated with moving into a blended learning environment, we have had challenges in terms of mental wellness and physical wellness. Fatigue sets in, the transition between, hey, school has ended now, I'm still at home, I was staring at a monitor and, do I move away from that? But a lot of the students actually do continue to engage in the cyberspace, and so that drains the energy from them. So how do we strike a balance between, how do your teachers design for the lessons? How do you want your lessons conducted, right? In striking a balance between mental wellness, physical wellness, enhancing your learning, right? And these are areas that we really, really want to look into. So when we unpack the challenge statement, I think my appeal to you is come from your experience in the last 2 years. Come from, unpack it in terms of what did I go through when my teachers engaged me? What did my peers go through when we were involved in a blended learning environment? Were we really paying attention? Were we, was our learning optimized? What could we have done better in terms of the various areas that I've just spoken to you about? The infrastructure, could it be the people factor, could it be the design of the lessons? How do we think we can address some of these challenges moving forward? Because we are here to continue with the existing learning environment. Where the situation calls for it, we will have to move to a blended learning environment. We'll continue with the new normal of engaging you in a virtual environment as well as in a face-to-face environment. Sometimes your friends are unwell and they can't join you physically in the class, but your teacher is streaming the lesson or they are logging in remotely and joining the lesson. Now, these are all really the way forward. We are not going to be, at least at this present point in time, in the next few months at least, we are not going to be able to just simply say, okay, COVID is over and we are going to go back to face-to-face environment. I don't think so, right? The new normal is here to stay. And so we want to hear from you, from your experiences, from your thought processes, from your creative ideas, right? How can we harness the affordance of the technology? How can we better make that environment a lot more engaging, balancing the mental and physical, well-being of our students, and to ensure that we continuously provide an environment where learning continues and it doesn't stop. And I do want you to think about the challenge statement, not within the constraints, but really think out of the box. Maybe we are not seeing something that you are able to, circumvent and to tell us, hey, do it this way. And I think, we will all be engaged and we would actually benefit from a blended learning environment. So I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you if you have key questions that you want to clarify. I'm also looking forward to looking at your solutions actually really, so that we are hoping that some of these solutions, we will be able to implement some of these solutions so that we can better, improve the education arena and better reach out to all of our learners. So with that, my apologies once again for the technical difficulties. Like I said, Murphy has got an issue with me today. But with that, I will hand you over to Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Amanda, over to
Dr.
you.
Shanti. Thank you. I think that what you mentioned about this challenge statement is very interesting, because a lot of these problems are very evident in our faces. It's something that was so talked about, especially in the last, especially when COVID first hit. And talking about mental health and mental well-being, that was something that was such a hot topic during the circuit breaker period as well. And I think it has died down a little bit. Like there's less talk about it, but it is still ongoing. So it is important to still touch on that topic as well. And especially when you talk about engaging learners, I think that I can 100% assure you I was listening to the entire thing, to your entire presentation. But that is also something that we have to address when it comes to students attending online classes. So I once again thank all the speakers. I thank you, Dr. Shanti, Mr. Anthony, and Mr. Justin for your time presenting your challenge statements to all of us. We will now move on to our Q&A segment. But before that, maybe you can toggle the layout of your webinar view in this manner on the screen to ensure, kind of the best view for this Q&A section. And if you haven't asked your questions yet, you can post your questions via the chat function. I think you can see the chat function on the bottom right corner. You can directly address it to the host or TCS Sustainathon or the presenter. And before we get into it, I just want to say that we're so sorry about the delay. There may be a slight 10 to 15 minutes of delay for this webinar due to our technical glitch earlier. We would do a very short Q&A discussion so that we don't take up too much of your time. And yeah, may I invite all the panelists to turn on your cameras and your mics to join us for this discussion. Or maybe Dr. Shanti, if you do not want to turn on your camera, it's okay.
I will not tempt fate again, Amanda. So
okay.
I'm going to stick to, you guys have to just listen to my voice.
It's okay. It will be nice to have you on, but it's okay. Maybe next time. So I think since all of you have your camera on now, Cheryl will be facilitating this discussion. So I'll have Cheryl come online to start this Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Amanda. So, due to some time constraints, we only have enough time for one question for each panelist. So, if you have any questions, do send them across to our email at tcs.sustainathon@tcs.com. So maybe let's just start off with the first one, directing it over to Dr. Shanti. Dr. Shanti, given the long-standing academic and examination-oriented culture in Singapore, right? So how can we actually accelerate towards a more holistic learning and well-being in a virtual blended learning environment? Because there's currently now due to the new normal pandemic, everything has been shifted online. So there will always be bound to have virtual fatigue, right? So in this way, how can we actually accelerate towards a more holistic and also a well-being in the virtual environment? Shanti, please.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for the question. In all honesty, I think in the last 2 years, it has been a steep learning curve. In fact, if you notice, ministry has actually cut back on the curriculum in itself to help the teachers, focus on what are the key information or key concepts that need to be taught in schools. So that was already a first step taken. This year, in fact, we have suspended examinations for the P3 and P4 students. That's again something that we have never done historically, at least in the years that I've been in the 30 years that I've been with the education, sector. So, having said that, I believe moving forward, there's been a lot of ramping up of professional development for our teachers. We are also trying to involve parents as important stakeholders in trying to help the students to actually manage their time. Students themselves, I think, will have to learn to become a lot more self-directed learners. So to prioritize and to manage their time, as well as to focus on what is the key concepts that they want to dive deep into. The examination system is not going to change in that sense. It's a systemic issue. But within the systemic challenge that we have, how do we then still engage our learners? And Singapore can be and still is proud of the fact that we continued learning with minimal disruptions, compared to some of the other countries where, children did not even learn for about a year or more than a year. So our students have been really, really fortunate. The important aspect here is to find a balance, to strike a balance, and there is constant, re-evaluation of what needs to be covered in schools and how it needs to be covered. But I think at the same time, as I said, there needs to be, I love the saying, where we talk about it takes a whole village to raise a child. And I think it's not just about teachers, it's not just about, schools, but it is also home, environment playing a part where we help our children to understand what is really important and to focus and what they need to probably let go of, and that would be the way to move forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shanti. Definitely, I totally agree with you. It takes a whole village to actually raise a child. Everyone actually has to work together, to overcome this, to actually go towards a more holistic approach towards learning. So, let's, direct the second question. I have another question from Ariel. Maybe I direct it to Anthony. Mr. Anthony, are you there?
Yes, hi. Yep.
So maybe just to ask you this question, do you see the more mature crowd, maybe between 30 to 40 years of age, having lesser motivation to learn? And, should we actually be placing our focus and emphasis on a particular age group or even a particular, social economic status, such as, your blue collar workers? So just wanted to understand, what do you think about that?
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Actually, I think just like exercise, learning may not be easy for the majority of us. I I think there's always that we have to really nudge people, or as part of the NTUC also have to like, for example, nudge workers to like go and learn, go and do something, go and learn. Today your jobs you may still have your current jobs, but what about tomorrow? So we're always doing all this nudging, and we think it is really very, very important for them, right, to actually think ahead, right? Like, what's going to happen and what can I do to improve? There's a lot of government subsidies on all these courses. There's really a lot, but really, are these people really taking advantage, or of these funding and really upgrade themselves? There are some of us who are, I mean, in that sense, the professional managers and executives. It is easy for them, right? Because or relatively easier, because they're able to look for information, know what to do. But on the other hand, some of these blue collar workers, right? Not that easy. So a lot of times we got to really make them be aware that there are such training program. Be aware that actually sometimes the courses is really it costs really nothing or negligible for them. But I think it's like it's really a journey, and how can we really help them in that journey? For some it's easier, for some it's really not that easy. So I think it is really our job to like what NTU says, leave no workers behind. Really think through how we can really help every strata of the society to really help them to have at least a better standard of living tomorrow than compared to today. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yes, yeah, everyone should actually have that positive mindset, to actually grow and improve themselves, like what you've mentioned, Anthony. And, yeah, so let's direct our last and final question to Mr. Justin Xiao. So, Mr. Justin, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so I have this question for you. Which are some of the countries in Asia or even globally that, have made significant progress in, enabling accessible and inclusive education for people with disabilities?
Okay. This question is a little bit tricky. But when we look at it globally, we look at the Western countries itself. I think especially in the States and in some of the European states itself, where they have actually accessibility is more of a regulatory requirement. So all these trainers, all these vendors, or you develop products, and basically everybody has to make when you got content published, all these have to be made accessible. And for them itself, because it's being a regulatory itself, basically anybody can get sued at any point in time. You can actually try to Google search, about this article where Domino's, I think, was sued by a blind user, if I'm not wrong, while being unable to order pizza on the site. So in the same sense itself, I mean, if for someone who wants to register a training itself and is unable to do so online, in this country itself, it becomes a legal issue itself. And these are actually taken very seriously across. Not that we do not take it, in Southeast Asia, we do not take it seriously, but I think a lot of us are actually new to this. We may not be very, very familiar, but a lot more work is actually being done now. On our side, we've been pushing and working with partners itself, trying to make things a little bit more accessible, not just training opportunities, but in all different kind of aspects. And of course, we do hope to see, more organizations on board in the journey with us. It's going to be a long, long journey. It's something that we have just started, in the recent years, over the last couple of years, making some of these changes more effectively. So we do hope, a lot more partners can actually come aboard with us in this.
Thank you so much, Justin. Yeah, I totally agree. Everyone should actually, each and every individual should actually work together. It's a really long journey, and, it really needs everyone's help and effort to come together and contribute and make an impact to the society. Yeah. So, now that, that's all for the Q&A segment. So, thank you so much for, everyone for participating in the Q&A discussion, and also thank you to Dr. Shanti, Mr. Anthony, and also Mr. Justin for, the knowledgeable insights and also information. And I'm very sure everyone has actually benefited from this session. So if let's say you have any further questions, you can always drop us an email to tcs.sustainathon@tcs.com. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Cheryl. Oh, Dr. Shanti, I can see you have your video on now. Hello. It's fine. You're finally able to come online with no, I think WebEx is just throwing a bit of a temper today because previously the webinars were okay. So it's just being a bit sassy at the moment. I think now that we understand, more about TCS Sustainathon and the challenge statements for Singapore this year, don't forget to check out our website and apply for one of the challenge statements, either as an individual or up to a team of 4. And after you submit your proposal, the shortlisted teams will be presenting at our country finale. And we have also expanded this ideathon to Malaysia and Philippines as well. So that's kind of like our, we call it for the TCS Sustainathon ASEAN version. So in that case, the top 2 teams from our country finale will then proceed on to our ASEAN finale.
And also, don't forget to register for our next ASEAN webinar happening on the 10th of November at 5 p.m. So you can actually start registering for the webinar through the QR code or link provided on the screen. Until then, Amanda, over to you.
Oh, hi. Okay. I think with regards to the webinar, I think we just want to say that we will try to ensure that the next webinar is a bit less glitchy and try to ensure that we coax WebEx a little bit more make sure it's not so sassy at the moment. But yeah, until then, I think remember that it's not just a race towards a better tomorrow,
but a marathon for a more sustainable future. Thank you all and have a good evening ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.